Hey everyone, Tin Man here, and Christmas has come early because we've got the Jull Tide update for Dota Underlords, and the first thing I want to point out about this is that on the Steam community page, it is listed as type small updates / patches, and it couldn't be further from the truth. This is a massive update that is going to dramatically shake up Underlords just in every facet of the game. So I'm really excited about it, and there's a lot to talk about, so let's hop right in. First off, round length. All units have had their health total lowered by 25%. Health values are now 1.5 times the original values that you initially shipped the game with. And this is probably due to a lot of feedback that rounds were taking too long, fights were really drawn out, and just taking a long time on the clock. And so by reducing the health total, you kind of find a nice balance between what it used to be where a unit could just get blown up in an instant and would never get time to cast. It gets one attack animation off and then it's dead. And that really wasn't fun for anybody. So now with this, with doubling it, it went a little bit too far. And so this 1.5 times the amount should be a good point to have reasonably engaging fights that aren't just coin flip, oh, I got my one spell off first, I win, or vice versa. So this should be a good balance, I think, to reduce the time that the rounds take. Additionally, there's going to be some other changes to the flow of the game that can also reduce the gameplay time here. So first off, the unit cap will start at just 3 units. So you're not going to start at 1 unit, you're going to start with 3 units, and you're going to start with 5 gold instead of 1. Interest is now capped at 3 gold. So normally you would have to get up to 50 gold to get maximum interest. You'd have 5 base income plus 5 interest at maximum. Now they've changed it so that you have a 7 baseline gold and 3 maximum. So if you're getting maximum interest, your gold is still going to be the same. But if you're not getting maximum interest, your kind of baseline level of gold income is going to be higher. So there's a little bit lower punishment for kind of spending a lot of your gold and rolling down early or leveling up quickly. It's not as passive. You're not going to be just sitting on your hands I'm just waiting until I get to 50 gold and then I'm just going to spend in excess of 50. You don't need to do that anymore. You really can spend a lot more aggressively in the early game and you won't be quite as far behind. If someone can still, econ up very well and just spend their excess above 30, but they're not going to be at quite as big of an advantage over you if you're spending your gold very aggressively because you're still getting 7 gold and they're just getting 10. So really it's not going to be that big of a difference. This should hopefully make the early game and mid game a lot more dynamic. You're going to be re-rolling a lot more. You're going to be leveling up more aggressively just to continue playing the game earlier rather than just sitting on your hands and waiting to 50 gold. That led to a very kind of stale gameplay pattern, very boring, very formulaic in a lot of ways. Also, creep rounds have been removed, and instead, items are going to be granted every 5 rounds. The item quality won't change whether you win or lose the round. So every round, from the very first turn of the game to the very last turn, is going to be against another player. No more neutral creep rounds that are basically just a minute or so just sitting around wasted. This does mean that you're going to get a little bit heavier punished if you're thinking, okay, I'm a little weak, but I'm going to hit a creep round, then I'm going to get 2 turns to play and try to find upgrades. You're not going to have that little bit of respite, so you need to make your comp better and better every turn. It kind of feels a little bit more like knockout mode in that regard, in that you don't really have any time off. You got to be playing the game from the very beginning to the very end. Also, Underlords have been adjusted. They're no longer selected before the game, and instead they're pickable in a new phase later into the match. So right before round 10 in standard mode or duo mode, and round 2 for knockout. So you at least play 1 round without them to kind of know where your composition is going to go in knockout. And you'll have 10 rounds in standard mode to kind of figure out where this is going and what Underlord might be best for you before picking it up. Also, higher tier units will now deal more damage to the enemy players at the end of the round. And this is a little bit of a complicated formula, and I'm just going to boil this down to you exactly what this means. You can go into the exact math, but basically 3, 4, and 5 cost units. So the the mid to late game units are going to deal 2 damage baseline. So if you lose and your opponent has a Lycan surviving, even if it's 1 star, he's going to deal 2 damage to you as opposed to 1 that he used to deal. And same with a 4 cost unit like a Doom or 5 cost Ace. They're all going to do 2 damage at 1 star. Then for 4 and 5 cost units, if they get up to 2 star, they're going to deal 3 damage to you rather than 2 from before. 3 cost units will still deal their 2 damage at 2 star. And then the other changes is a 5 cost unit at 3 star, which just doesn't happen outside of maybe knockout mode, which this doesn't matter in knockout mode. Those really high star level units will deal 4 damage, but I doubt that's ever going to come into play. And 1 cost units, so your little 1 cost unit, 1 star axe, or 1 cost axe, if you get him up to 3 star, he's only going to deal 2 damage instead of 3. So some minor adjustments that basically says if you're losing the round, you're going to take a little bit more damage if people have like the 3, 4, and 5 cost units. So they get a little bit powered up, and that should help to speed up the game a little bit. I know one of my big complaints was the game was just taking too long. My last time I recorded a standard length video was 67 minutes. And that's partially why I just haven't been recording many standard games, is because I don't want to sit around for 67 minutes, and I don't think most of the viewers want to watch a 67-minute long game. Hopefully this should bring it down to in the realm of half an hour, maybe 35 or 40 minutes, much less than 50, 60 minutes or 70 minutes in the really extreme cases. So lots of good changes here. I really like it. It should promote a much more aggressive gameplay and much more engaging, fun early and mid-game. That's not the half of it, though. There's lots of other changes. Okay, general changes. Leaderboards have been updated, so you can now see the ranked knockout and ranked duo leaderboard. You can view stats in the post-game screen. You can view duo scoreboard and post-game screen. All kinds of awesome stuff. Knockout tries to avoid giving you the same opponent twice in a row, and that happens a lot in Knockout, where you have like the same record, and then you fight somebody and you lose, and then you pair them again and you lose, and then you pair them again because they get paired differently. It's a mess. So this new algorithm should mostly avoid giving you the same opponent twice in a row. There may be some scenarios where that's unavoidable, but hopefully it should be much less than it is right now. And also the multiplier for certain stat changes has been reduced a little bit, down to 4 instead of 5 million Brawny Kills and Legion Commander. All right, the Underlords. So I kind of hinted at it before. Underlords have been changed, so you pick them halfway through, or not halfway through the game, but you pick them up somewhat through the game once you kind of know where your composition is going to go, rather than locking it in at the start. They also have been streamlined a little bit. I know a lot of people have kind of not been happy with kind of how complex and arcane and like it just was difficult to explain, like how the hype system worked and like how the different talents work and how you had to unlock talents, and it felt like very bloated, and it felt like it was complexity without added depth. So what they've done here is they've streamlined it into 2 different fight styles. Everybody is going to have like a core ability, and then the fight style like modifies that core ability, and then they'll have an ultimate that is associated with that fight style. The Underlord core ability will start halfway through cooldown, so Nesix has Martyr's Boon, that's her sacrifice her health to heal, and it'll have an 8-second cooldown, and it'll trigger 4 seconds into the fight. Ultimate abilities have been lowered and will be a little bit more impactful, so they'll cast a little bit earlier in the fight, which kind of goes along the way with every health total has been reduced, so the fights should be a little bit shorter anyway. Okay, so in Nesix, her Martyr's Boon says that she's going to take damage to herself, right? And then allied units are going to heal up over time. And the cooldown has been adjusted. What happens when she has the healing support fighting style, the Martyr's Boon will deliver a 50% heal immediately in the rest of the duration. So this is how it was initial functionality when Nesix first shipped, was this kind of like 50% heal and then rest over the duration. So she's a very healing-centric one if you pick that one. If you pick damage support fighting style, instead of healing, the Martyr's Boon will grant increased attack damage. So that's the end of medicine talent that used to exist. Pure Pain, her other active ability, is removed from the game. It kind of doesn't really fit into this more streamlined style. They want to like focus in on the core identity of the Underlord, and Nesix is used in the sacrifice to heal up everybody rather than dealing Pure Pain, which honestly was just like a really strong ability. So that's definitely going to weaken her power, losing that, but remember, every Underlord is going to be modified in this way, so like anything you used to know about balance of the Underlords is pretty much thrown out the window now. She has 2 different ultimates, her Enthrall and Demonic Golem. Enthrall rather comes from the damage support fighting style, so if you want to be dealing damage, you want to get that increased damage output, you'll get the Enthrall ultimate. And if you want to summon Demonic Golem, that'll be from the healing support style, fight style. So you're not going to have the choice between both of these every game. I don't know if I really clarified that. On round 10 of every game, or round 2 in Knockout, you're going to be given the option of each of the 3 Underlords. So you'll have an option for a Nesix, Hobgen, and Jull. And then each one of them will say, here, you can pick a Nesix with healing support style, or Hobgen with his style A, or Jull with his style B. Right, it'll be one of those random assigned. So you won't get the choice between these 2 every game. You'll get a Nesix, and if you pick a Nesix, you get the one that it says. So maybe you're like, okay, I really want a Nesix damage support, but I'm only being offered healing support, so maybe I'll take Hobgen instead for whichever one he gets. Speaking of Hobgen, let's see what his styles are. He's got Explosivo, so Supercharged has been removed. He keeps his Explosivo, which was a bit more iconic, I think, for Hobgen, like dealing that big chunk of magic damage, and kind of sets his identity with that, just dealing fire damage to the enemy. Still has the same kind of deal. High damage dealer fighting style will double the effect of explosive O on the main target. That was the implosion talent, I believe. And if you pick the support damage dealer fighting style, instead the enemies hit are going to be stunned, so it'll be an AoE stun as well. His ultimate, if you pick the support damage dealer, so the stun, will be Let's Go Crazy. And Hobbion's attack will now reach the entire battlefield, the normal supercharge kind of buff, and increases attack speed. And he's going to continually swap between targets just like before. It no longer silences him, doesn't set him on fire, and instead grants the entire army bonus attack speed that'll scale up throughout the game. Now this looks really, really strong in the late game. 80, 90, or 105 attack speed to everybody. That's like a Moonshard plus whenever you activate this. So that seems really strong just on paper. We'll have to see how it plays out in practice, of course. And then if you pick the high damage dealer fighting style, you'll get friendly fire, which retains a similar functionality, dealing just big chunks of magic damage where the bombs drop. And now, of course, the new Underlord, Jull, and we don't have a nice little picture here, but he's the giant walrus man, and he's much more of a tanky Underlord. He has a baseline ability, Shake It Off, so Jull will reflect 50% of the melee damage taken back to all adjacent enemy units, and heals 30% of melee damage and 15% of range damage taken over the last 5 seconds. So this will be cast every 10 seconds, and then he'll kind of like deal damage back to melee attackers, and heal himself a little bit. If you pick the aggressive tank fighting style, the reflected damage is twice as much damage, but it's delivered over time. It's kind of a dot rather than instantly. And if you pick the healing tank fighting style, the damage is also converted to healing, split evenly to adjacent friendlies. So if he's just right in the middle of the brawl, he's going to heal up everybody right next to him instead of dealing more damage. Really flavorful, really cool. He also has 2 ultimates, Barrels of Fun. Jull will call in barrels from the edges of the board, and if they hit an ally, that ally will gain attack speed, 50 attack speed. If they hit an enemy, that enemy will take some physical damage and receive 20% more magical and physical for the rest of the fight. So these kind of like roll in at like random rows and columns. So anything closer to the edges of the board is more likely to get hit by this, and ones in the middle are a little bit less likely to get hit by them. That's with the aggressive tank fighting style. Deals some damage and buffs your team. If instead you pick the healing tank fighting style, Jull will buy a round of all members, or a round of drinks for all members of your army for happy hour. When taking damage, 30% of that damage will be received immediately, so 70% will then be taken over 7 seconds. So really, your units can't get burst down once this is cast. They're going to take like, if you would deal like 1,000 damage to somebody because you get a big crit, they're only going to take 300 of it. And then they're going to start taking 100 damage per second over the next 7 seconds, which gives more time for healing to come in. If you want to get his Shake It Off healing tank fighting style, will heal up people. It also just like lets you live if like, the unit who would have just been killed in one shot now has 7 seconds to live to continue pumping out damage. So I think this sounds like a really powerful ability. It doesn't actually reduce any damage. It doesn't deal any damage. It just kind of is good utility that plays really well with a healing style. So I think this is a deceptively powerful one. Somebody might think, oh, I want to deal lots of damage with Barrels of Fun, and maybe they think healing tank is weak, but I actually think this is a very powerful ability. Okay, the bots have been slightly updated to work with the new hero rotation and some other stuff. Don't really play too often with bots, so I'm not going to spend too much time about that. But the hero rotation, the following heroes have been removed from the game. Anti-Mage, Arc Warden, Enigma, Lena, Luna, good, you always get those two confused, Magnus, Mirana, Nature's Prophet, Phantom Assassin, Puck, Techies, Templar Assassin, Tidehunter, and Windranger. So for the most part, what this means is elusives are gone, shamans are gone, and there's some other non-elusive non-shamans, such as Lena, who was like a very redundant human mage, as well as Techies and Tidehunter, which were some pretty impactful late-game units. Techies, obviously, the Ace of Inventors is going to be a big hit to them, and Tidehunter, a very, very popular CC unit. So these will be rotated, and the idea is that hopefully every season, however long that season may be, maybe a month or two, they'll do another rotation of units. We'll then take out some other alliances, bring these ones back in, maybe introduce some new units, and just constantly shake up the meta. So this will be in exchange for the jail. There will be no more daily jail, and of course no more daily jail update videos, because we're going to have kind of a season-long rotation rather than a daily jail. Let's talk about some of the other hero changes. I guess the Jill's talked about a little bit later on. Broodmother, her gold cost has been reduced from 4 to 3, and her maximum health has been adjusted accordingly. Clockwork has been reduced from 3 to 2, and got a little bit of a nerf, losing some of his armor and his attack damage. Legion Commander, my favorite unit, has been reduced from 3 to 2 and not affected. Yes! Not affected. Legion Commander, I mean, she was kind of nerfed by the fact that every unit received the 25% health nerf, so her health scaling is a little bit weaker because she's starting from a lower point, but so is everybody. But overall, I'm like really like ecstatically happy that Legion Commander is now 2 cost. I cannot wait to play her in more different builds and more in the early game. Shadow Shaman, he has been changed. He was a shaman, and of course the Shaman Alliance has been removed. So he's now a Troll Druid. And since we saw some of the other druids, or rather Nature's Prophet was removed, so he kind of takes Nature's Prophet's spot in that regard. His Hex has been reduced in cooldown, or reduced in duration rather, because it might have been a little bit strong if he was so easy to get up to 3-star thanks to the Druid bonus. Slark has been increased from 3 cost to 4 cost, so he's now a tier 4 unit. His stats have been improved a little bit, and his stolen attack speed has been substantially buffed to make him a little bit more threatening at that 4 cost unit. He's still pretty squishy, only 900 health baseline at 4 cost, so you really want to get him up to at least 2-star before really wanting to play him in an assassin build. Snapfire no longer triggers Refresher Orb. Oh, that's an interesting bug. I didn't even know about that. Old Scatterblast is the every 4 auto attack she does the shotgun blast, so that's good. Sven, he is no longer an ace. Sven was always kind of like the weird ace, which I thought was cool design, but it wasn't good. Like, it wasn't a good unit. He's now been reduced from 5 cost down to 4. And now he's just like a really good just carry unit. He's not going to make your knights weaker or less damage reduction. He's just going to walk around and deal big chunks of damage. So I'm really excited to play with Sven in Knights build. Since Luna got removed, he might have to do a lot of the heavy lifting for the AoE damage in Knights builds. Viper has been changed from Scaled Dragon to Dragon Assassin. So back to an assassin. He's been kind of changed in alliances over time, but he's in addition to assassins, which we know that Phantom Assassin and Templar Assassin are both removed, so they kind of needed a bit more love. And I've been growing to like Viper a whole lot recently, so I'm pretty happy to see that. And Weaver, of course, Elusive has been removed, so Weaver is no longer an Elusive. He is now an insect, or is Scrappy Insect Hunter now. I don't know if he was ever this exact combination of alliances, but he is still very viable. He used to be in Hunters and always felt a little bit weird in Hunters and might still be a little bit weird, but you can also go in with Scrappies and Insects as well. Okay, there's also item changes. So they have made a whole bunch of brand new items into the game. They've removed a lot of them, including all of the global items, as well as a bunch of sometimes less used items, sometimes a little bit overpowered, sometimes boring items. Full list here, I'm not going to name through every single one of them. But they've also added a whole bunch of new ones. So now in tier 1 items, we've got Big Time Contract, which is no longer grants bonus health, and of course it's now tier 1, but it does change you into a Bloodbound. You got Chainmail, Claymore, Gloves of Haste, kind of like the standbys of just like good solid stats. Headdress is a new item, gives some health regen. I still have Hooded Defiance, have Kaya, which will increase your ability damage. Morbid Mask gives you lifesteal. Talisman Evasion gives you evasion percentage. Vitality Booster has been nerfed slightly because the overall health totals have changed. And Void Stone, which is like basically what old Brooch of the Aggressor used to be, just gives you mana per second rather than bonus mana per attack. Still use it pretty similarly. Also, by the way, on all of these new items, I'll be putting out a full analysis of all the new items in its own separate video, because that's its own long video talking about the new items, how to use them, and which units they go best on. So I'm just kind of glossing over them here, but look for that video to come out very soon after this one. Tier 2, Arcane Boots. Instead of once per battle, it's now every 15 seconds you can get additional proc of Arcane Boots. Barricades health has been nerfed, kind of go along with health total and everything else. Blink Dagger is still there. Crystallis is basically what Daedalus is if it got moved down to tier 2. It still gives some plus attack damage and a crit chance. Desolator is basically what Blightstone turned into. It debuffs a target for 5 armor for 5 seconds instead of just 3 armor, and it didn't really say how long it lasted. Now, for 5 seconds after you attack a target, it'll debuff them and they lose 5 armor. I keep on trying to say 4 for some reason. Anyway, Force Staff is still in there, which is probably the most lackluster one. I still hate Force Staff. Anyway, Hand of Midas, a brand new item, gives plus attack speed, 30% attack speed, and also a 30% chance of getting 1 gold whenever the equipped hero kills an enemy. So this is what Poaching Knife has kind of morphed into at tier 2. Orb of Venom, enemies damaged by the equipped hero's attacks will take 30 damage per second for 3 seconds, so it applies a 30 damage dot. Essentially adds 90 damage to your attack if you're constantly switching targets, which is kind of hard unless you're like a Brute or maybe a Deadeye or something like that, but still a very powerful effect if you can spread it around. Stonehall Cloak and Stonehall Pike give you either bonus health for the cloak or bonus attack damage for the pike for every unit that unit has killed. So this is basically the brawny buff added to an item. Rather than just buffing all of your brawnies over time and only brawnies caring about kills, now everybody cares about how many kills they have, because if you pick up Stonehall Cloak or Stonehall Pike, that's going to be really important to determine how much damage or bonus health that they get out of this item. So really awesome design there. Vanguard has had its health total nerf, as we discussed before, and it's also been moved down to tier 2. Used to be in tier 3, so this kind of is fair, and it's it gets a little bit of a nerf, but it's still a very powerful effect in tier 2. It seems like the tier 2 items just in general have been rather dramatically improved, except for Force Staff. That one still stinks. Tier 3, Battle Fury was an item that was previously in tier 4. Now it's been dropped down to tier 3. Get that cleave a little bit earlier in the game. Blade Mail that has been increased from tier 2 to tier 3, but now also grants armor, which was really weird that it didn't, because it was like only an offensive item, but it looked like a defensive item, so it was really weird. It's awesome now that it gives armor and still reflects damage, so still a pretty powerful effect. Jull's Scepter is a new item, gives plus 5 mana per second, so kind of like half a Void Stone. And whenever whenever a unit attacks the equipped hero, doesn't matter if it's melee or not, it'll get Cyclone into the air, becoming invulnerable for 2.5 seconds. So this is kind of like a Force Staff, but also has mana attached, and it doesn't push them away, it just like kind of stuns them in place. But of course you can attack them while they're floating up in the air. Still have Maelstrom. Mask of Madness has been reduced in lifesteal by just a little bit, 20% down to 15%. The Mechanism Heal has actually been increased, which is kind of at odds with the reduction of health on everybody else. So Mechanism now proportionally is quite a bit stronger, but it seems like tier 3 items are pretty much stronger in general. Octarine Essence is still there, unchanged. Silver Edge, a new item, gives plus 30 attack speed and plus 300 health. So whenever an equipped hero attacks a unit, you'll apply Break to that unit for 5 seconds on a 5-second cooldown. So you now have access to Break outside of specific units. Skull Basher is still there. Target Buddy, the most important change of the entire patch, Target Buddy has added a festive hat. So now he looks a little bit cuter wearing his festive hat. Definitely the best change of the patch. Vladimir's Offering is another new item. It's a really cool item. It applies an aura. Allies within 2 cells of the wearer will get plus 10% damage, plus 5 armor, and plus 10% lifesteal. That's a lot. That is a lot of things right there. Obviously, you get a good damage increase. Plus 5 armor is rather substantial. It gives like, almost a warrior buff to your entire board, or something like that. Something close, and then some survivability from the lifesteal. This is a really, really powerful item, and of course it's competing with a lot of other powerful tier 3 items, but I really like this design, and I feel like it can be a very strong pickup in a lot of builds. And it's a really large radius, 2 cells away. Tier 4, Eon Disc is a new item, gives plus 500 health, and when the equipped hero's health is reduced below 50%, they become invulnerable, untargetable, and disarmed for 2 seconds. Basically, you go into a little bit of a stasis, and you can still cast and still channel abilities during this time, but you can't attack. This is a really weird item, and it kind of like it's like probably best used as like a defensive, like drop aggro, because people will retarget you since you can't be attacked, and then maybe they'll attack somebody else while your important unit kind of drops that aggro for a couple seconds. BKB, the attack damage, some attack damage has been added onto it, so nice little buff there. Butterfly is a new item, gives plus 35 attack damage, plus 35 attack speed, and 35% evasion. So a nice kind of jack of all trades item that it's really good to see attack damage and attack speed on the same item. I don't think we've seen that before. Dagon cooldown has been changed from once per battle to 12 seconds. That is an awesome change. Dagon was so pitifully bad. Now that it can be cast multiple times per battle, that is a really, really good change. Diffusal Blade, this is kind of like the anti-mage effect. It lets your equipped hero burn mana from the target, and damage done by that equipped hero generates no mana for the target. So basically turn your guy into anti-mage, which is good because he's been removed, and I always thought that was a cool mechanic. I have Scotty still in. Healing Ward. Healing Ward is now tier 4, and it's been buffed slightly. God, Healing Ward is still garbage. Why is it tier 4? Yeah, this is still not a good item. Don't pick Healing Ward. Moonshard is still in. Pipe of Insight's good. Refresh Orb no longer provides that extra benefit to allies within one cell, which was always like a really weird thing anyway. It still refreshes your cooldown. Still a really great item. Just doesn't have that other weird line of text on it, which was so rarely relevant. Scythe of Eyes now provides additional plus 10 mana per second. That's basically the equivalent of the Void Stone or the Brooch for the Aggressor from before. And the pig duration has been slightly nerfed. But now it's kind of like a good mana item rather than just a one-time like kind of CC item. It's still a good mana item as well. They've also adjusted tier 5 items. Aegis of the Immortal has been changed. It's no longer a global item. It's now an equipable item. And it performs just like it does in Dota. It'll resurrect the target hero with 50% of its max health 5 seconds after it has died. Still got Bloodthorn, Divine Rapier, Heart of Tarask. And you've got a new Horn of the Alpha, which is a pretty cool item. It was one of my favorite items back in Artifact. And it says 2 seconds after the battle begins, it'll summon the Thunderhide Companion, which is pretty tanky. Has a decent DPS, like 120-ish DPS, and a good long range. So just adds an extra unit to your board. I think it's a cool idea, but honestly, I don't know if it's better than something like a Bloodthorn or Divine Rapier, but we'll have to see. It's a cool idea that I haven't played with, so I don't really know how strong it might be, but it adds some damage to your composition pretty well. Radiance, the burning enemies now have a chance to miss their attacks in addition to be taking damage. That was a good buff. Radiance was always a little bit weak for tier 5 items. Satanic is a new item in tier 5, gives plus 750 health. That's quite a bit of health. And whenever the equipped hero drops below 30% health, they'll gain 200% lifesteal for 3 seconds. And this comes on a 20-second cooldown, but realistically, this is probably only going to happen once per fight unless you really gain a lot of health during that 3-second window. Shiva's Guard is still in, and Tombstone has been changed from 4 up to 5, and the zombies have been buffed accordingly. The radius is still pretty small, so I'm not really sure that Tombstone is the best option. And finally, Vesture of the Tyrant, which is one of probably the most interesting new items. It says, allies within one cell cannot die unless the equipped hero dies. So it's kind of like a Helm of the Undying, but it applies like an aura of Undying around it. It can be really weird if people, like your Undying guys just like are stupid and just walk right out of it and just die. So it could be like an all or nothing kind of thing, like a best item in the game or just like garbage, depending on exactly how everything plays out. But it's really interesting. I'm really curious to try to play with this. Of course, it's tier 5 though, so I don't know how many opportunities I'll get. Alliance changes, we kind of mentioned this. Elusive and Shaman have been removed from the game, and Primordial Alliance is now a 2-4 alliance because there's just not that many Primordials left because they took out Arc Warden and Enigma. The UI updates, this is a whole bunch of boring stuff. I'm not going to get into that. I guess that's actually it. Well, yeah, okay. I thought there would be a section about the jail. Did I miss that? I don't know, we kind of covered it, but yeah, I don't see it. This is what I get for not fully prepared. Anyway, we kind of talked about the jail being removed because of the hero rotation. I thought there was its own separate section further down. In any case, there is so much that has changed in this update, and like I just kind of like highlighted the important stuff, but like actually evaluating what this means for the meta and like how it's going to all play out, this is way too much for me to speculate on right now. So I'm not going to like say, oh, this is the new strong meta comp, or like this item is so insane, or this item is really weak, or what. There's so much that has changed. It's really hard to evaluate this without getting in and playing it. So that's what I'm going to be working on, making a lot more content, making some guides, and obviously a lot more gameplay videos. And I'm just really looking forward to it. I hope you are too. I will definitely be playing this a ton over this Christmas time here. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.